5. The law of replacement built a life so full they can't compete. Machiavelli didn't just believe in countering attacks. He believed in becoming untouchable. And the most powerful way to do that when someone ignores you, replace them with purpose, progress, and presence. Psychologically, humans are wired to fear being replaced. It signals loss of status. If you simply sit around and wait for them to notice you again, you reinforce their power. But if you evolve while they're absent, if you become sharper, more driven, more magnetic, they begin to feel the loss. This is the law of replacement. Don't fight to keep their attention. Make them fight to reclaim it. In behavioral psychology, this is called social comparison theory. People evaluate their own worth in comparison to others. When they see you thriving without them, the ego kicks in. They begin to question what they lost, what they missed, and why you're no longer orbiting them. Machiavelli would advise, make your presence felt through your actions, not your words. Become so busy building yourself that your silence becomes louder than their games. Go to the gym, elevate your appearance, deepen your mind. Pursue mastery in something real. The more you replace their absence with purpose, the more they become irrelevant. And when they return, and they almost always do, they won't be met with the same version of you. They'll be met with someone they no longer recognize, someone they can't control, someone they now have to chase. 6. Turn the tables. Become the one who withdraws. In every relationship, there's a balance of pursuit. When someone ignores you, the balance shifts. But here's the move Machiavelli would make. Don't restore the balance. Flip it. You become the one who withdraws, not out of spite, out of power. This is not a silent treatment. It's a shift in posture, a psychological pivot. You stop being the seeker. You become the source. People chase what retreats. This is known as reactance theory in psychology. When people feel they're losing access to something, their desire to regain it intensifies. So when you withdraw your presence, you create vacuum energy. Suddenly they feel the weight of your absence, not because you made a scene, but because you didn't. This move must be clean, quiet. No need to post about it, no need to announce it. You simply disappear, emotionally, mentally, and physically from their world. Machiavelli believed that perception creates reality. If you appear to be unaffected, disinterested, or simply too focused on your own path, the person who once ignored you begins to feel small. Not because you made them feel it, but because they now realize you're gone. And that's when the dynamic shifts. That's when they start checking your page, watching your stories, asking mutual friends. It starts subtly, but it builds. Because when you withdraw with strength, you make them realize just how valuable your presence was. 7. Reclaim the throne. How to make them chase. Now comes the reversal. You've gone silent, you've detached, you've built. Now the final Machiavellian move. Let them come to you and make them earn their way back in. When someone begins to chase you, don't reward them instantly. That's what most people do. They celebrate the attention. They open the gates. But Machiavelli would say, never give power too quickly. Make them prove their shift is real. This isn't manipulation, it's protection. When someone ignores you once, they've shown you their capacity to devalue. If you return without standards, they'll do it again. Instead, raise your standards. Set new boundaries. Make it clear, without saying a word, that you've changed, that the old dynamic no longer exists. This activates what psychology calls effort justification. When people have to work harder for something, they value it more. When they have to regain access, they protect it. Machiavelli's writings often emphasize the need for rulers to appear merciful, but not to be weak. Your return should appear open, but not vulnerable. You are not bitter, but you are no longer blind. And here's the deeper truth. By the time they chase, you may no longer want them. Because in the process of building yourself, you've risen above their old hold on you, and they can feel it. That's what real power looks like. You don't need to reject them. They'll realize they lost something they can't easily reclaim. From rejection to radiance, becoming untouchable, being ignored used to hurt. Now it activates something else. Power, growth, self-respect. That's the final transformation. Machiavelli believed power is not granted. It is claimed. And that's what you've done. You've taken rejection and turned it into revelation. You've turned silence into strategy. You've turned absence into elevation. By not reacting emotionally, you've become emotionally superior. By pulling back, you've created space for your value to expand. And now you're not waiting to be noticed. You are the one who sees clearly this is what the journey was always about. It wasn't about making them chase. It was about realizing you never needed to. The real prize wasn't their attention. It was your own power. Psychologically, humans crave coherence. We want our outside world to match our inner belief. When you stop chasing, when you act from self-worth, the world shifts to reflect that belief. You attract differently, you command differently, you live differently. And here's the truth. The person who once ignored you may return. But you won't be the same. You won't be waiting. Because now you don't need to be chosen. You are already chosen by your own vision. Machiavelli would smile. Because this is what he taught. The wise don't demand power. They become so necessary, the world must give it to them. And in that silence they come. Not because you chased, but because they now know what they once ignored is what they'll never forget. Would you like this turned into a full 500 words per section voiceover script next? Have you ever felt that sinking silence when someone you care about suddenly stops responding? That empty space where a connection used to be, now filled with doubt, confusion, and a quiet kind of pain that echoes louder than words ever could. It's not just being ignored that hurts. It's what it whispers to your mind, that maybe you're not important, not wanted, not enough. And in that moment, everything inside you wants to reach out, to explain yourself, to fix whatever went wrong. But this is the trap. This is where most people lose their power. You see, when someone ignores you, it isn't always a mistake or a moment of forgetfulness. Sometimes it's a subtle power play, a test. A move designed, consciously or not, to see how much control they have over your emotions. And the sad truth is, most people fail that test. They chase, they beg. They try to prove their worth, and with every message they send, every glance they give, every explanation they offer, they hand their power away piece by piece until there's nothing left but need. But what if you didn't play that game? What if, instead of chasing, you paused? What if in that silence you found something stronger than validation, self-respect? This is where everything begins to change. Because the person who stays grounded while being ignored is the one who commands the most power. Not because they are cold or indifferent, but because they know something most people never learn. That attention given freely is never respected, and that silence used wisely can speak louder than desperation ever could. When someone withdraws their energy from you, the instinct is to run after them. But Machiavellian wisdom teaches the opposite. Power is not in the pursuit, it's in the pause. It's in the ability to stay composed, focused, and unshaken while the world tests your work. Because in that pause, you're doing something most never do. You're allowing the other person to feel your absence, not through games, but through the calm, confident space where your dignity lives. This isn't about making them suffer. It's about protecting your energy. It's about remembering that your value isn't determined by someone else's ability to see it. And here's the truth. When you stop chasing, when you start choosing yourself with calm resolve, people feel that shift. They sense the difference. They begin to wonder why their silence no longer affects you, why you're not folding, why your world didn't stop turning. And that curiosity, that fear of losing the attention they once took for granted, that's what makes them chase. So stay with this. Because by the end of this video, you're going to know exactly how to flip the script, not with anger, but with power. You're going to learn how to move in silence, how to command respect without saying a word, and how to become the kind of person others never dare to ignore again. You didn't lose anything when they ignored you. You were being shown something, a mirror, a reflection of how much power they believe they have over you. And whether they're doing it to test you, manipulate you, or protect their ego, the truth is the same. They're watching how you react. That's what the silence is really about. It's not the absence of attention, it's the presence of a question. And that question is this: do you value yourself enough to stand still when others pull away? This is where most people break. They think ignoring means rejection, and rejection means they're not enough. But that belief is the chain. It keeps you enslaved to opinions that don't matter. It keeps you craving crumbs when you were born to build empires. Ignoring isn't always about you. It's often about them. Their fear. Their games. Their need to feel important by making you feel small. And if you take the bait, if you go running towards silence with your heart wide open, you hand them the very thing they wanted. Your control, but there's another path. a path that few take. It starts the moment you realize that not responding isn't weakness, it's dominance. You're not ignoring back. You're not playing games. You're just refusing to give them what they didn't earn. Your energy is no longer free. It's not a gift to be wasted. And when someone decides to step away, they should feel the gravity of that choice. People ignore when they think they're more important than you, when they think your attention is guaranteed. And the second you prove otherwise, you interrupt their script. Suddenly, they're not in control. Suddenly, your silence becomes louder than their absence because now they're left to wonder why you didn't react, why you didn't break, why you didn't beg, and that silence becomes unbearable. Not for you, but for them, that's the power shift. When you no longer respond emotionally to disrespect, you stop being easy to manipulate. You stop being a pawn in someone else's game. You become something much rarer, someone who cannot be played, someone who chooses who gets access and who doesn't. Someone whose value isn't tied to who shows up, but to what they bring when they do. The truth is, you don't need closure. You don't need validation. You don't need them to see your worth. Because once you see it yourself, you stop shrinking for anyone. And here's what happens next. They feel it. Your energy changes. Your absence feels different. You're no longer silently waiting. You're building, growing, becoming. And they can feel the door closing, slowly, powerfully, without a word. So the next time someone pulls away, remember this: your reaction determines your position. Stay still. Stay silent. Let their ego echo in the emptiness, because the one who does not chase always controls the game. And when you master that, they won't just come back. They'll come back wondering how they ever thought they could walk away from someone like you. The mind always chases what it can't have. That's how desire is built, not through presence, but through distance. When something becomes too available, it loses its edge. It becomes predictable, easy, forgettable. But when something withdraws, when it becomes harder to reach, the human mind becomes obsessed. This is not cruelty, it's psychology. And it's one of the most powerful forces you can use when someone tries to lower your value, ignoring you. When you make yourself too accessible, you communicate one message: you don't value your own presence. And if you don't value it, why should they? Every time you drop everything to respond, every time you reach out again just to make sure they're okay, every time you continue showing up where you're clearly not being seen, you make yourself smaller. Not because you are, but because you've allowed your need for connection to outweigh your need for self-respect. But everything changes when you reverse the flow, when you stop proving and start pulling back, when you allow your distance to speak louder than your words ever could. This is the law of scarcity. What is rare becomes valuable. What is common becomes invisible. When you master this law, you stop being ignored and start being chased. The truth is, your attention is powerful. Your time is powerful. Your presence is not a favor, it's a privilege. But most people forget that. They give themselves away too freely. And in doing so, they teach others that their value is negotiable, that they'll stay even when ignored, that they'll return even when pushed away. But not you, not anymore. Because now you understand the deeper game. When someone pulls away, you don't lean in. You step back even further. Not to punish, but to protect. You protect your energy. You protect your focus. You protect your soul from being wasted on someone who doesn't see what's right in front of them. And in doing so, you reset the entire dynamic. You create contrast. You disrupt the pattern. And that disruption makes them notice what they tried to overlook: your worth. The more unavailable you become, the more your presence starts to matter. The more you invest in yourself, the more your absence grows heavy. They may not say it. They may pretend they're unaffected. But inside they feel it. The silence, the shift, the gap between who you used to be and who you've become. This isn't about pretending to be better. It's about actually becoming better. You're no longer the person who needs attention to feel seen. You see yourself. You're no longer the one who waits. You're the one who walks forward. Quiet, calm, unapologetic. And when you do that, when you rise without noise, they begin to notice what they lost the moment they chose to ignore you. You don't need to speak. Your absence speaks for you. Be. And it speaks in a language they can't ignore. You become magnetic the moment you no longer need to be seen. That's when the power shifts. Because most people live their lives on the emotional leash of others, reacting to every gesture, every text, every silence. Their worth rises and falls based on how someone else chooses to treat them. But the person who detaches from that cycle becomes dangerous, not because they don't feel, but because they no longer need external approval to move forward. Emotional detachment is not indifference. It's not coldness. It's strength. It's knowing who you are so deeply that nothing shakes your center. When someone ignores you, you don't spiral. You don't beg. You don't shrink. You breathe. You observe. You pull your energy inward and let it fuel something greater than explanation, evolution. That's the difference between people who stay stuck and people who rise. The stuck want closure. The evolved want clarity. And clarity doesn't come from others. It comes from silence, from space. From choosing self-respect over self-abandonment. The more you can detach, the more power you hold. Because now their attention is no longer your oxygen. You don't crave their presence. You create your peace. And that changes everything. You stop being reactive and start becoming intentional. You stop chasing connection and start radiating confidence. Your energy becomes cleaner, sharper, focused. And people feel that. Whether they understand it or not, they respond to it. Because emotional control is rare. And what is rare always draws attention. You weren't born to beg for validation. You were born to walk into any room, any relationship, any situation, and know if they see you, good. If they don't, that's fine too. Because your vision doesn't depend on their recognition. It depends on your discipline, your growth, your unshakable inner foundation. That's what detachment gives you, the ability to keep moving, keep building, keep rising without needing someone else to come along for the ride. And as you rise, something interesting happens. The same people who once ignored you start to notice, not because you chased them, but because you stopped. Your silence becomes louder than their presence. Your indifference becomes more impactful than your attention ever was. And now they want to be seen by you. Not because you gave them what they wanted, but because you gave yourself what you needed, space to grow beyond them. This is where your power lives, in your ability to stay calm in chaos, in your refusal to let silence make you small. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to explain your worth. You only need to embody it fully, quietly, consistently. And those who once ignored you, they'll see. Not because you told them, but because the version of you that no longer needs them is the version they never saw coming. And that's the version they'll never be able to forget. You don't rise by waiting to be chosen. You rise by choosing yourself so fully that no one else's silence can drown your voice. When someone ignores you, they expect to feel powerful. They expect your world to pause. But when you keep moving, when you level up without their attention, something shifts deep inside them. Not just curiosity, something stronger. Uncertainty, regret, a quiet sense that they may have misjudged your value. And now, they're being left behind. You have to understand the human mind isn't wired to handle being replaced. The moment someone senses they're no longer needed, they start questioning their worth. That's the power of evolution. That's the psychology of transformation. While they were playing games, you were building. While they withdrew, you advanced. While they watched your silence, you sharpened your edge. And now you're no longer where they left you. You've outgrown the version of yourself they were comfortable ignoring. This is how you win, not by trying to prove your worth, but by making their absence irrelevant, by replacing the emptiness with purpose, by filling the silence with progress. This is the quiet victory, the kind that doesn't need applause, because the results speak louder than words. When your focus becomes your fuel, nothing they do or don't do can interrupt your ascent. You don't just become better to impress them, you become better because you realize what's been inside you all along. The ambition, the discipline, the fire. You stop waiting for someone to validate your identity and start building one they can't deny. And as your life expands, the emotional weight they once held over you shrinks. They don't own your story anymore. You do. There's a point where the energy flips. The person who once ignored you starts to feel ignored themselves. Not because you're trying to hurt them, but because you've shifted direction. You're no longer looking back. You're not holding space. You're not checking for signs. You're too focused on becoming someone who no longer tolerates being treated like an option. And that silence, it starts to echo loudly in them. They check your profile. They ask mutual friends. They hesitate before reaching out because something in them knows you've changed, you've detached. You've risen, and now their return is no longer guaranteed to be welcomed. That's what power looks like, not in revenge, not in cruelty, but in the unapologetic growth that makes your presence undeniable and your absence unforgettable. You're not proving anything to them. You're proving everything to yourself. That you never needed the attention to be complete, that your energy doesn't wait, it creates. And once you live from that place, the need to be chased disappears. Because the version of you that no longer waits to be seen is the one the world can't look away from. Not because you begged for it, but because you became it. When they return, they'll be hoping to find the same version of you they left behind. But that version no longer exists. You didn't wait. You didn't stay frozen in their absence. You grew. You shifted. You became someone they can't predict, someone they can't control. And now, if they want access again, they'll have to come differently. Because you're no longer available to the same energy that once disrespected your worth. This is the moment most people sabotage themselves. They finally get the attention they once craved, and they rush to accept it. But if you accept someone back without requiring growth, without setting a higher standard, you send one clear message. You're still the same. You haven't evolved. And the power you gain through silence dissolves the moment you act like nothing happened. You have to hold the line, not to play games, not to be cold, but to stay true to the person you became in their absence. You've built peace. You've gained clarity. You've found strength in solitude. If they want to be in your world again, they must earn their place. Not with empty words, not with fleeting gestures, but through consistent effort that matches the level of respect you now expect. You're no longer impressed by attention. You're moved by alignment. The hardest part of rising is outgrowing what you once begged for. But this is where real transformation lives. It's in saying no to what you used to accept. It's in protecting your healed self from the very chaos you worked so hard to rise above. You're not proving you're better. When you're free. You're proving you've changed, and that's what makes them chase not the fear of losing you, but the realization that they already did. Let them feel the shift. Let them sit in the discomfort of no longer having instant access. It teaches them a lesson words never could. That your presence has weight now. It's not handed out, it's earned. And the more they realize that, the more intentional they become. Because people value what they fight for, they protect what they almost lost. They show up differently when they know the door won't stay open forever. You are the standard now, not out of ego, but out of evolution. You've learned that being seen isn't the same as being valued, that being wanted isn't the same as being respected, and that presence without purpose is no longer welcome in your life. So when they come back, as they often do, pause. Listen, observe, watch if their actions match their words. Watch if their energy matches your growth. Because you're not chasing anymore, you're not proving, you're not reaching down. Ooh, you're standing tall, rooted in self-worth, surrounded by peace. And that's when they'll chase, not because you asked them to, but because your power gave them no other choice. The one who doesn't need them becomes the one they can't stop thinking about. And the moment you realize that, you never look back. There's a level of power you reach where silence is no longer a reaction. It's a message. You're not waiting for them to come back. You're not hoping they'll change. You've simply outgrown the need to explain yourself to people who chose not to understand you. What once felt like rejection now feels like protection. What once triggered insecurity now confirms your strength. Because you're not who you were when they ignored you. You're something else entirely now. Calm, focused, untouchable. Every time you chose discipline over distraction, you stepped closer to that version of yourself. Every time you stopped yourself from reaching out, from reacting, from chasing closure, you broke a pattern that used to define you. That's not just growth. It's rebirth. You're no longer addicted to being chosen. You've chosen yourself again and again in the dark and the silence with no applause. And that's why you shine different now. That's why your absence stings more than your presence ever did. You've built an inner world so complete, so rich, so full that no one can offer you peace. You carry it with you. The one who chased is gone. The one who waited is gone. What remains is someone so rooted in their value that they don't seek attention. They command. Not through loudness, but through presence. Not through proving, but through being. You've moved from needing them to notice you to becoming someone they can't ignore. Because while they were busy withholding energy, you were building a life too powerful to be overlooked. And now you understand what real power feels like. It's not control over others. It's control over yourself. Over your reactions, over your focus, over your peace. Over your peace. That's the kind of power no one can take away. And once you have it, you don't argue for your worth. You don't beg for love. You don't lose sleep wondering what went wrong. You move forward, quietly, decisively, relentlessly. You no longer carry the weight of needing to be understood by those who only listened when it was convenient. You speak less, but your presence says more. You give less, but it's worth more. Because everything about you now is intentional. Everything about you is earned. You don't give people what they didn't value the first time. You don't invite back what tried to break you. You simply evolve, in silence, in strength, in full control of your power. This is your turning point. The moment you realize the door they walked out of doesn't need to open again, not because you hate them, not because you're bitter, but because you've built a new door, one only opened by those who see, respect, and rise with you. And when they come back, not only will they feel the shift, they'll know deep down they're not returning to the same place. They're facing someone reborn in silence, sharpened by absence, defined by unshakable self-worth. You never needed them to wake up. You needed the silence to wake you up. What felt like abandonment was really an invitation to stop seeking fragments of love and people who couldn't hold your depth, to stop tying your value to whether or not someone chooses to see it. You've seen it now. You felt the shift. The difference between being wanted and being respected. The difference between being needed and being truly valued. And once you've tasted that kind of clarity, you don't settle for anything less. The version of you that rose from being ignored is not bitter. It's precise, clear, purposeful. That version doesn't chase people. It chases mastery. It doesn't wait for invitations. It builds its own table. You're not here to convince anyone to treat you better. You're here to build a life so aligned, so full of conviction, that anyone who disrespects your worth automatically removes themselves. You don't have to say a word. Your growth speaks for you. Your peace does the talking. You've realized something that changes everything. Attention is cheap, but presence is sacred. You no longer confuse the two. You've stopped falling for the illusion of interest without effort. You've stopped mistaking someone's curiosity for care. You now know what you bring. And that awareness makes you rare, because most people are still trying to prove themselves to the ones who already looked away. But not you. You've turned that energy inward, and it shows. Every moment you chose to focus on yourself instead of them, you built value. But because your elevation made their position in your life optional, this is your edge now, the unshakable calm that comes from knowing that no one can take from you what you've already rebuilt inside. The ability to stand in solitude without collapsing into loneliness. The power to not just survive rejection, but use it as a platform for refinement. Because every moment of silence, every ignored message, every dismissed effort, it all led you here, to this moment, this mindset, this mirror where you no longer see someone waiting to be loved. You see someone who already is, and now they feel it. The shift, the distance, the weight of no longer being necessary. Not because you changed to hurt them, but because you changed to save yourself. And that version of you, the one who chose growth over chasing, is the version they will never be able to ignore again.